what you'll need for this dress: a fitted skirt, your main fabric that you're going to use, your sleeve fabric, a blouse that's straight, not tight, not one that is tapered in, an iron, a zipper in your color of the fabric, a ruler, threads in the colors you'll be using, pins, measuring tape, and scissors. So the first thing you're going to do is fold your blouse in half. Then you're going to measure from the top of the neck here all the way down to about midway from the blouse. You're going to write that number down, and that's going to be your first cut on the fabric. For example, here I have the fabric that I'm using, and I wrote down the number 20, and the way that I cut the fabric is perpendicular to the edges. So whenever you have your fabric, you'll know which is the edge, because it'll have something going on kind of like this, and obviously the part that's not the edge is going to be cut. So from here to here it's 20 inches. Then you fold your fabric. After folding your fabric, you're going to lay your shirt on top of it, also folded in half, and you're going to align the center front of the blouse with the edge of the fabric here. So it's like that, with some room up at the top. And you're going to cut along the edge of this blouse, but you're going to add a half an inch, or about a half an inch. And then you're going to cut at the neck as a half a U. Then you're going to trace the first piece of fabric that you cut onto another piece of fabric that is also folded in half. This first one that you cut is your front, and the second one that you cut is going to be your back. The only difference with the two is that the back is cut as a V, so that we expose the back of this design dress. Then to do the final touches, you're going to cut off from the shoulder about a half inch from the top down, and at the waist from the armhole down to 8 inches. And finally, for the back, we're going to cut at the bottom a half an inch, and it's going to go straight up to the point. Now flip both of them inside out. So I open it up, and this is where I'm going to draw my markings for the front. And for the back, I'm going to do markings on this side. The markings we're going to be doing are for our darts, and darts are there to create curves. From that center line that you have as where your bodice was folded in half, or the front, you're going to measure 3 inches to the right and 3 inches to the left, and you're going to draw your first mark. Now we're going to do a little bit of math here. You're going to measure your waist all around, and you're going to divide that by 4. So for example, my waist is 28. Then you measure your waist from the bodice front, and that's going to be divided by 2. It is 9. So I'm going to subtract my 7 from 9, and that equals 2 inches. So then from your 3-inch mark, you're going to do another mark at 2 inches to the right, and 2 inches to the left. Then you draw a line from the middle, the exact middle. You can measure with your ruler to make sure it's in the middle. And you're going to draw a line straight up until 6 inches. Then from this point, you're going to draw a line straight at an angle towards your armhole. Then you're going to connect the bottom lines from your waist up to your point, and you can curve your line so that when you put it on, it's not just a point, it is actually a real curve. Then you're going to draw 2 more lines with a space of about 1/2 inch. These outer lines are where you're going to sew your garment. For the back of the bodice, you're going to repeat the same steps as the front, but you're not going to go all the way to the armhole. First, start with drawing your first 2 marks at where your seam allowance is. Then draw a mark from the center seam allowance mark to the right at 4 inches. Then from your other center mark to the left 4 inches. Then measure from here to here, and you're going to subtract your waist measurement from that. So for example, mine here is 8 and my waist number was 7. From the 4-inch mark that you drew, you're going to go to the right 1 inch, and on the other side to the left 1 inch. Then right in the middle, you're going to draw a line straight up and stop at 6 inches. Then connect the point to the marks, and this is where you're going to sew. Now, one last thing before you go on to sewing. Since the back is at a somewhat diagonal angle, this means that this part of the bodice is going to stretch more. Therefore, we need to lower the armhole a little bit like this, about 1/2 inch, and you're going to cut that out. So for the skirt, we're going to repeat the same process that we did as the bodice. We're going to measure the length of the skirt. So for example, mine is 25 inches, and I'm going to add 2 inches to that. So I'm going to cut 27 inches like this. Once again, like on the bodice, we fold the skirt in half, align the center of the skirt, and we're going to cut with 1/2 inch past the outline of the skirt. Then repeat the same for the back, but this time you're going to add an additional 1 inch. So it would be 1.5 instead of just 1/2 inch. And for the sleeve, you're going to measure how long you want it to be. You're going to measure from under your arm to your elbow and subtract 2 inches. So for me, it's 9 inches, minus 2 is 7. And then you're going to measure from your shoulder point to your elbow. And over the arm, it is 12 inches. You cut your piece of fabric at the length of your over your arm. So for mine, it was 12 inches. I cut from here to here 12 inches. And here is my whole strip. I cut that in half. So I have 2 pieces here that are both the same. Then I fold this piece in half and the other piece also in half. And I lay them on top of each other. Also, a trick to do when working with slippery fabric is to tape together some pieces of paper and pin them onto the fabric, kind of like a sandwich, like the fabrics would be in between this layer of paper and the other layer of paper. So this is what my final sleeve was looking like, and I'm going to show you the marks before I finish cutting it. There are my measurements. (7 inches, 8 inches, 2 inches down. There's the curve. You curve it going down like a U and then going up like a hill. And then I do 12 inches. This is from my folder. I also added the seam allowance for sewing. I did a 1/2 inch all throughout the top and then 3/4 inch all throughout the bottom, because the bottom is going to be folded twice when sewing. Last bit of cutting that we're going to be doing before we start sewing. So for the collar, for the neckline, we're going to cut these strips that go diagonally on the fabric. You can use scraps that you have left instead of having to cut new fabric. And you're going to cut a couple strips that are each about 1.5 inches, or I mean 1.25 inches thick. See, I have my lines here. I have 1, 2, 3. So to make the sewing process easier on the hem of this rounded sleeve, I'm going to iron the fabric. So you unpin everything that you did and remove the papers. Then you're going to separate each of these sleeves, open them up, and we're going to iron this down about like 1/4 inch and iron all the way around. We're going to fold it once again in another 1/4 bit and iron it all the way around, across again. And then you're going to repeat this for the other sleeve. Time for the fun part! Okay, so we're going to sew, starting with the bodice, top of the dress, and then we're going to sew the skirt. Then we're going to do the sleeves, and lastly the bias strip along the neckline. To sew the front and back of the bodice, we're going to start with our marks that we did for the darts. Sew along those lines. So for example, you would fold this here. I'll show you. See, this is where I have my marks. So we're going to follow that line to sew down the dart, and then we're going to open it up and kind of curve the fabric to then sew on the rest of the dart towards the armhole. You do that on both the front and then the backs. Here's a little close-up of what it looks like. See, I have my pen line here, and that's where I'm going to start sewing. To piece the bodice together, you're going to lay your backs with the front side up, meaning that the part that you just sewed, the extra is on underneath, and right here it's just flat. Then you're going to place your front of the bodice on top of it, and this time it's going to be with the outside of the blouse down and the inside of the blouse up. So now you see these sewing extras that you did. You're going to sew along the side seam with the edges flat together, and then you're going to sew the shoulders. So 2 side seams and 2 shoulders. So this is the finished bodice of the dress. For the skirt, we're going to repeat the same steps as the bodice. We're going to start with sewing the darts, then we're going to sew the side seams, and then we're going to finish with the hem. And the hem is sewn by folding the fabric about 1 inch, and then you're going to sew along the edge. So here's the finished skirt. It's not closed yet because we're going to do that part last. For now, we're going to go to the hem of the skirt. So this is the bottom of the skirt, and we're going to fold this by 1 inch like that towards the inside, so that all the stitching and extra seams, everything is on the inside and it won't show, you know, when you wear the skirt. So here it is, the top of the skirt where the waist is. It's not sewn or anything, it's still raw. And then the bottom of the skirt is stitched down. Fold it over and stitch down for a nice clean finish. Now you fold it in half once again, and this time you're going to close the skirt so that it does a full circle. See, like that. So that it does a full circle. We're going to sew the last part closed, but we're going to stop at about 7 inches below the waist. So we're going to leave 7 inches of this open. But from here down, we're going to sew it down. We're going to sew it closed. Before you sew the skirt onto the bodice, you need to make sure that they are the same length. So to do that, you're going to get your measuring tape, and you're going to go around the skirt measuring like this from one edge to the next. Mine, I measured it and it is exactly 28 inches, so it's perfect. And then for the bodice, you're going to repeat the same thing. Mine is actually 29 inches, so I'm going to have to take off 1 inch from both sides by dividing 1.5, dividing the 1 into a half and half. So that means I would have to cut this part 1/2 inch and here also a 1/2 inch. Now that you've made sure that both the waists are the same length, you're going to match them together so that you can sew them by facing both the skirt and the bodice face forward, and then you're going to flip the bodice upside down like that and match it to the skirt. Like this. So this is the inside of the bodice and this is the inside of the skirt. And you can pin it down to keep it in place while you're sewing, but removing the pins as you sew. So here's the finished piece. It's looking so cute. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to attach the sleeves and everything. The back is still open. And this is the front with its darts. Now we're going on to the sleeves. Before attaching the sleeves onto the dress, we're going to have to change the thread on the machine. So I'm going to switch this one to the white one, and the same with the bobbin inside. I'm going to switch it to my white bobbin. Now we're ready for the sleeves. Okay, so what we're going to do is where we ironed the edge, the hem of the sleeve, we're going to sew along that entire piece. This is what it looks like right now, and we're going to sew it down. Look at how cute it looks. I love it. Nice and clean, and it was super easy to sew because I ironed it before sewing it. Once you're finished with both sleeves, before attaching it to the dress, you're going to fold each sleeve in half and close the circle. Once again, here's the circle. Like I could pass my arm through it. And here's the edge that we're going to sew together. So to attach the sleeve onto the dress, you're going to flip it inside out. And the dress is going to remain normal side out. And you're going to pass the sleeve over the dress like this. Then you can stitch it down like that. I'm loving it! Look at that! Oh my gosh. So flirty and playful. Now we're going on to sewing the bias strips onto the neckline. However many strips you have, you can sew them together to make one long one. And then we're going to start at the waist of the back of the dress. You match your strip onto your dress like this. See, there's the strip. This is the edge of the dress. This is the waist of the back of the dress. And you're going to sew along there at a ½ inch, all the way around to the other waist back. Here I have some extra left over. You can cut that off. Now we're going to fold this strip. We're going to fold it over that raw edge. So there's a raw edge. We're going to fold this to cover that. And then we're going to sew all along here. And the way that we're going to sew is by following the line that we already have in the front. Because see, in the front you're going to have this little line here. You're going to sew over that so that your thread doesn't show. This is what the finished collar looks like. nice and clean. And the dress is pretty much finished. Now the last thing to do is the zipper, but I'm going to show you that in a separate video. The dress is finished. So now the last thing you can do is, press it so that it's nice and clean and it looks professional. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make yourself some really cute dresses. Stay tuned for the next 2 videos. So the one where I'll be showing how to do the zippers, and then another one where I'll show you how to do the circle skirt that I had in my gold dress. So before I conclude this video, I'd like to just give you a bit of some insights. If you're a beginner, you're probably going to struggle a lot. That's everybody. I struggled when I first started learning to sew. So, everyone makes mistakes, and I totally recommend to be used to those mistakes. Like, make as many mistakes as you want, and don't ever look down at it. Don't feel bad. That's gonna happen. You're gonna learn so much from them. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. And you can always unstitch. Whenever you do, you can unstitch what you've sewn that you maybe sewed wrong, and do it over again. And I also totally recommend to make, if you really want to get the hang of this, make multiple dresses, use various fabrics, have fun with all the fabrics that you want to try, and see how they work for you and what you like and don't like. But definitely what matters most is to just have fun.